Airbnb booming, the biggest IPO of 2020. Finally here as Airbnb prepares to trade on the Nasdaq in a listing that'll bring that company more than $3 billion. And it's looking like we could see more than a double on the opening trade. Not bad for a startup that was just supposed to pay the rent for the co-founders back when it started in 2008. We'll be chatting with one of those co-founders in just a second. But first, I want to take a look at where the expectations are for the opening trade here with Yahoo Finance's Emily McCormick, bringing us the latest on that. And Emily, as I said, looking like more than a double perhaps on that opening trade.
Absolutely, Zach. Taking a look here, we are awaiting that opening trade of Airbnb on the Nasdaq. It last indicated to open at $150 a share. Now, that level may still change in the next few minutes, next few hours. We are, again, awaiting that opening trade based on these indications. And Airbnb's valuation will exceed $100 billion if shares do, in fact, trade around where they are indicating as of now. Now, that would be a huge increase from the company's last private valuation of about $18 billion in April, as well as its pre-virus private valuation of $31 billion from 2017. Now, already Airbnb's IPO was larger than expected last night, and the company did price its shares above its previously marketed range. We saw that IPO pricing coming in at $68 per share, and Airbnb did sell more than 50 million shares to raise about $3.5 billion. So its IPO did top that of DoorDash on Tuesday. Now, DoorDash raised nearly $3.4 billion in what had also been an upsized IPO. And those shares, for context, did pop about 78% in their opening trade, although we have seen them under a bit of pressure today. Now, heading into this public offering, really worth kind of looking back on the journey that Airbnb has had over the past year. It has, of course, struggled a bit because of the pandemic. We saw revenue down 32% in the first 9 months of this year. And remember that the company did tap into the debt markets twice earlier on in the spring, and it did have to lay off about 25% of its overall headcount. Now, we have seen its operating results start to improve heading into the third quarter. We actually saw the company post a profit for at least a temporary basis here. So some improvements here for Airbnb. Again, that indication showing a $150 share price here if levels do hold into that opening trade. It will be interesting to see how demand shakes up. Zach and Akiko.
Yeah, Emily, it feels like we're seeing a bit of a repeat from yesterday. A lot of people shaking their heads saying, look, with DoorDash, they got more than 80% pop on the first day. You're talking about an indication of $150 a share when it was priced at $68 in a hybrid auction model that was supposed to get a little closer to the pricing, or maybe be a little more transparent on that front. And there's got to be a lot of bankers out there that could get some heat on the other end of it. I'm curious if you're hearing anything on why we're seeing such a divergence here from where it was priced at to sort of this demand that we're seeing today on Airbnb, and what could be an indication after all this wraps up.
That's a really good point, Akiko. And if we just think about what goes into the IPO pricing, it really is a fine line that investment bankers have to actually walk here, because a lot of times they do want to engineer that sort of IPO pop to really underscore the demand that could actually linger for some of these newly public companies. But we did see Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, on Bloomberg TV earlier today. He actually was first informed of where the IPO or the pricing for Airbnb shares were indicating while he was on that interview, and he did seem to be shocked himself at where that was coming in. So something to consider here, just as we think about this huge valuation that this company could have in its opening trade, again, potentially over $100 billion if shares do open where they're indicating around $150 per share.